Airline companies and airline executives did not get the bailout that they wanted from the American taxpayer in the historic $2 trillion relief legislation that Congress just passed. The airlines got the version of assistance that Sara Nelson wanted them to get. Sara Nelson is the head of the Flight Attendants Union, and she may be the most effective labor leader working the halls of Congress today because Sara Nelson helped guide Democrats in the House of Representatives and the Senate to deliver aid to the airlines so that the airlines could continue to keep their personnel on the payroll, pass the money straight through the airlines to the workers. And so the flood of applications for unemployment benefits does not now include the airline personnel who Sara Nelson represents. Congresswoman Katie Porter saw Sara Nelson in action and decided the Nelson plan should be the plan to cover workers in other fields. And so Sara Nelson and Katie Porter have teamed up and are now trying to save the paychecks for millions more Americans. And joining us now is that dynamic duo, the most formidable pair of guests I have ever introduced on this program at the same time. Congresswoman Katie Porter, who represents the 45th Congressional District in California, a former Republican district that Katie Porter turned blue in the last election. And Sara Nelson is the president of the Association of Flight Attendants. Congresswoman Porter, what drew you to the Nelson plan?
I love that you're calling it the Nelson Plan because this really is a plan that comes from Sara's advocacy for airline workers. And so having survived and watched what happened with the TARP bailout of Wall Street after the economic crisis in 2008 and 2009, I knew how angry Americans were going to be when they got the short end of the stick and big corporations got sweetheart deals. And what I saw in the CARES Act was that legislation was written very, very quickly. It was not good. It was a sweetheart deal for corporations. And then all of a sudden, these amazing worker-centered provisions came into the CARES Act for the airline industry. And that was the result of Sara amplifying those voices and House Democrats and Senate Democrats standing up for workers and putting them first in this coronavirus relief package.
Well, as Washington tradition has it, when you come up with a plan, it gets named after you, and that's why I've been calling it the Nelson Plan. And as any veteran of legislative process in Washington knows, when it's a big bill and it's last minute and it's rushed, all sorts of bad things happen. And Sara, I have to tell you, when I was working there in the Senate Finance Committee, I saw labor leaders, including President of AFL-CIO, rush in there at the last minute. And it was too late. The corporate America just steamrolled them. And so I am kind of in awe of what you were able to accomplish there. How do you think it can be translated out into other fields?
Well, Lawrence, I want to be really clear that what we did here was revolutionary, but it's also really simple. And we need simple plans in the middle of a crisis. And so these payroll grants are intended to go out. They were intended to go out on Monday. Secretary Mnuchin still has not put them out. And actually, Reuters released a list of questions that the airlines are getting today in order to apply for these grants, 15 questions long. One of them is about payroll. 4 of them are about their frequent flyer miles, the people who are the investment bankers, and they're helping Secretary Mnuchin. And so that's why we need the Congressional Oversight Commission established right away to make sure that Secretary Mnuchin is implementing this the way Congress intended, and also that this can be applied as a plan to all Americans so that we can keep the paychecks going, keep people in their jobs, connected to their health care, and ready to lift our economy off again on the other side of this threat.
Congresswoman Porter, we have some bad news so far with President Trump basically firing one of the inspectors general who's supposed to be overseeing this kind of basically the benefits of this legislation. He's not the only person involved in that oversight, but it certainly is a setback at the very beginning for that process.
I think it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for the Congressional Oversight Commission to step up quickly. And it makes the work that that commission has been tasked with doing in the CARES Act all the more important. So what the Trump administration basically said is, because the Inspector General is an administration official and is part of the executive branch, we can ignore that person, we can fire that person. Well, those arguments do not apply to congressional oversight. And so that's why I'm so interested in the Congressional Oversight Commission and making sure that it gets stood up quickly. As Sara said, we need to get these paycheck protections out to these aviation sector workers immediately. And then we need to be taking that model and applying it to every single industry that's looking for help. It's a replicable model that will put workers first and make sure that these dollars are being used to help our overall Main Street economy.
Sara, what does it feel like to have Katie Porter on your side? Katie Nelson, it might just blur into that at some point with the two of you. What does it feel like to have Katie Porter on your side? Because I remember the first time I saw Congresswoman Porter asking questions in one of her first congressional hearings, and I was just stunned by what I was watching, just kind of a brilliant approach to it that I'd never seen before. And so she's a pretty unique ally to have in the halls of Congress these days.
I do have to tell you that I feel like I'm at the Justice League right now. And when Katie called, out of the blue, by the way, no warning at all, just called and said, we got to get going on this. And I love your plan. Let's apply it to the rest of America. So let's work on this together. What I think that the rest of the American public needs to know is that this is a simple plan to keep people in their jobs. And never before has it been focused on individual Americans when we bail out in the middle of a crisis. This is for the workers first. And through the Congressional Oversight Committee that I hope Katie Porter is going to be on, we can make sure that we are holding Secretary Mnuchin accountable to these principles that are in the aviation portion of the bill and can be applied in the $450, almost $500 billion allocated to the rest of America to get people help right away. And so the American public should know that that help is coming. All you have to do is call for it.
All right, I'm watching my clock here. Here's what I'd love to do. I'd like to squeeze in one more commercial break. Sara Nelson, I would like to just let you go off into your evening because I have some politics I'd like to talk with Congresswoman Porter after this break. She's endorsed Elizabeth Warren in the presidential campaign. I want to find out if she's ready to make a change in that endorsement and maybe some little question or two about the vice presidential nomination. Congresswoman Porter, can you stay for that now that you know what's coming?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sara, thank you very much for joining us, Sara. We really appreciate it.